Hi, and welcome to the Cancer Journey Show. Today we have a guest speaker, and I know you're typically used to us doing our Cancer Journey Coach um, demonstrations, but we're now adding a piece to our show, and we're calling it Voices from the Field. Today we are speaking to Jill Meyer-Lippert. She is the founder and CEO of Side Effect Support and the expert in oral health for those going through their cancer journey. She is dedicated to helping cancer survivors manage short-term oral side effects and long-term damage caused by chemotherapy and radiation. I believe that what she has to say is very important. Part of the reason why we're having Jill here today is because we believe there's similarities in our mission. Ours being about supporting the mental, emotional, and spiritual health of an individual through their cancer journey. And Jill's helping individuals with their oral health. Both of these appear to be kind of sidelined or stepped over during somebody's cancer journey. And we feel that what we're doing, the mission that we're on, is just as important as any other treatment that a cancer patient and even their caregivers are going through as they're going through the cancer journey. Okay, so with that, let me turn this over and bring Jill in. So Jill, please tell us a little bit about you and a little overview about your organization.
Okay, thank you. I am a registered dental hygienist. I've been in the dental industry for almost 30 years now. And when I first started my job assisting back in June of 1992, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer at that time. And I saw how badly she suffered with oral side effects. And she really had no guidance or help from her oncology team at all. And it really frustrated me. So at the time, I very foolishly thought now that I worked in the dental field, I would be able to find all of these answers for her. And it was evident that there were no answers on the dental side either. So I saw that patients were being left with very inadequate information and sometimes very inaccurate information simply because of this disconnect between the medical teams and the dental teams. So it just really inspired me through the years to want to learn more. And eventually, and my mom is a cancer survivor. She's still doing well, but my dad ended up having cancer as well, and he did not survive his cancer. But after we lost him, I really wanted to take some of these experiences and create something more out of it. So I first did that by creating a volunteer program where I provided kits, little oral care kits that everybody who came in that had chemotherapy or radiation to the head and neck, they were able to go home with something, some information and products that they could try right away and start using. And I kept that going from about 2006 until about 2010. All of a sudden, companies weren't as willing to help with the donations that I needed to keep it going. And the kits were getting smaller. And finally, by 2012, I knew I either had to stop doing it. And I really, that broke my heart, the thought of stopping that, but or I could do something larger with it. And that's how Side Effect Support came about. So I created it as a business rather than a something that would be dependent on donations, because I really wanted to be able to pick and choose the information and the products and everything that I offer and not be dependent on just the mercy of who would provide that for me.
Right. Oh, I love that. So you're really looking at what's there today and what's coming on board to really help with oral health.
Yes, and things are changing all the time. So that's the exciting part, is there's more opportunities to offer more services and better products and things that will help people more.
So can we just step back for a moment? Because I know we're talking about oral health, and immediately for me, that's like, okay, getting my teeth cleaned. So can you kind of pull apart those two, and what is oral health and how does teeth cleaning play into that?
Well, having your teeth cleaned is a very important aspect of oral health, because we want to, basically our mouths are full of bacteria, and there's good bacteria that we need for us to have a healthy mouth, and there's bad bacteria that cause cavities and infection and periodontal disease and all of those things. So the goal is to create a good balance, that you have more of the good bacteria than the bad. And having your teeth clean definitely does help that, but there's so many other aspects to it, that having thorough examinations is always very important. And in the ideal world, this is something that I really try to advocate for, that if people get enough information, that they have a dental examination and any necessary treatment before they enter into chemotherapy or radiation, or even some of the newer targeted therapies.
Mhm.
It's so important to remove any cavities, remove any infection, remove any sharp edges, anything that might be an irritation to the tissue, because that can really snowball for somebody as they're going through treatments.
Great. That's helpful. And now that you're talking about snowballing and other effects, I've heard, probably through you, that we're not really conscious of the side effects that can happen because of poor oral health, especially during the cancer journey.
Right.
You,
There's
yeah.
very little information that's provided to patients, as they're it just falls through the cracks. It's not on the radar for a lot of cancer treatment centers. There are some larger centers that they'll actually have dentists on staff or a hygienist, and they're just part of the treatment process. But those are pretty few and far between. So the vast majority of people, it's not really mentioned, or if it is, it's not a priority at all. So by the time that the side effects occur, it's hard to get them under control, where we are much better off anticipating what the side effects may be and taking steps before they even have a chance to start, in order to delay the onset or possibly prevent them.
And what are some of the things that could happen that we're not aware of? I mean, it's like, it feels like a secret, and we're unveiling the secret here. Like, if you don't take care of your oral health, then what could happen?
There are so many possibilities, but one of the most common problems that people have during cancer treatments is dry mouth. And that is very common for so many people with all different types of over-the-counter and prescription medications. But a lot of people look at dry mouth as a comfort issue, and it is far more than that, because our saliva actually has a lot of protective elements in it. So when you're missing that saliva flow, you actually become more susceptible to cavities, you become more susceptible to infections, you become more susceptible to trauma in the tissue, because you don't have that lubrication or the healing abilities.
Right.
So just something as simple, or I shouldn't say simple, but what most people view as simple as dry mouth can really cause a lot of damage to their long-term oral health. So, and then there's mouth sores. A lot of people have mouth sores, the oral mucositis. There's even some possibilities now with damage to the jawbone called osteonecrosis. Sometimes that can occur from radiation, and sometimes it can occur from certain types of medications that are used. Even people that go through bone marrow transplants can have their own unique concerns, like graft versus host disease, that can affect their mouth. So it's really unique according to that individual's health and what type of treatments they're having and what kind of oral health they go into the treatments with, because somebody that starts their cancer journey with a really healthy mouth is going to be less likely to experience the oral side effects versus somebody that goes in with a lot of oral disease.
Okay. So I've heard that, and this is even in general, but I'm guessing that it's kind of exacerbated if someone's going through their cancer journey, is that your oral health has an impact on your heart.
They've made so many links. They've made a lot of links to the mouth with the rest of the body. And it seems ridiculous that we would not understand that, because obviously the mouth it's the gateway to the body. But they have found connections between oral health and heart disease, to strokes, to pregnancy issues, to Alzheimer's disease. And there's actually some evidence that they are finding links to certain types of cancers as well, where they will find specific types of the harmful bacteria embedded in tumors in other areas of the body. So oral health can have a huge impact in so many different ways. So it's just another way to keep the rest of your body healthy. And I think anybody that has gone through that cancer journey understands how important that is.
Right, right. So I'm grabbing onto the phrase gateway. Like, wow, it's a gateway to everything else. And I just don't want to harken back to my cancer experience where, yes, I did have dry mouth, but in addition to that, I I also am when we had IV. Oh, I
Like the
don't even
infusion,
remember when.
the infusions.
Yes, infusions, and then they would just clear the line with saline, and I could taste all of that. So I would get like a little lemon drop or something, a piece of candy that I would mask the flavor, but also kind of to create some salivation. What do you think about that? You're smiling.
Yeah, that's one of the stories that makes all dental people cringe. But it's something that is so common. I know there's a lot of oncology centers that still, keep out lemon drops or Jolly Ranchers or things like that. And the problem is, especially in a dry mouth, now you're adding a prolonged exposure to an acidic, sugary substance. So somebody who's so susceptible to cavities with a dry mouth, having that exposure, that is a recipe for disaster. That person is going to be much more likely to develop cavities simply by doing that.
And so, what would you suggest instead of a Jolly Rancher, which once you said it, I could feel my mouth salivate?
There are actually candies and gums out now that have sweeteners in them that are beneficial to oral health. So there is a natural sugar substitute called xylitol that is made from fibrous materials like corn cobs and birch trees. And it's actually found naturally in some berries and different foods like that. But the carbon structure is different than regular sugar, even though it tastes like sugar and it looks like sugar. But the bacteria, when I mentioned about having that healthy balance of bacteria, the bad bacteria that causes cavities and infections can't digest that. So when you're using those on a regular basis, and they say kind of the sweet spot is 5 exposures a day, and you can get that in candies and gum, in toothpaste and rinses. With regular use, you can actually cut down on those negative types of bacteria, so the good bacteria can flourish. And probably the biggest thing to be aware of with them, well, they help to stimulate saliva, and they help with flavor. They're very, very tasty, but they are digested as a fiber. So you do want to introduce them slowly into your routine to avoid any digestive issues. And that helps your body to get used to it. And then also, just like raisins and grapes and chocolate are fine for us, but not for our dogs. Same thing with xylitol. You definitely want to keep any xylitol products away from any pet dogs.
Okay, so no accidental dropping.
Correct.
So you brought up rinses, and I immediately went to dry mouth. So I know that there was like a over-the-counter mouth rinse that they recommended when I had dry mouth. What else is out there? And what about the whole natural arena for rinses for dry mouth?
It depends. There's so many options out there now. At one time, there usually was one very popular brand that was kind of the go-to. And just being in practice for so many years, when I had patients with a dry mouth and I would ask them what they're using, it typically was always Biotene. That is,
yes, that was the one.
So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just know for most people, my next question would be, how is that working for you? Some would say fine, and a lot of people would be like, not so great, but I don't know what else to use. So there are so many options now. So using some of the rinses with xylitol in there can help to stimulate saliva because it has that sweet flavor. But there are just a lot of options out there now for dry mouth. The hard part is there are certain rinses on the market that are actually acidic. So when I talked about, the acidity in the lemon drop and the negative impact of that. There are actually oral care products, some of them that are acidic. So they would not be necessarily good choices for long-term oral health either. So that is one thing I really suggest, is that when you have products, even if they're considered all natural, to question that. If you have a doctor, if you have your hygienist that's recommending, I recommend this brand, I would ask them, what is the acidity? And if they don't know, that is a good thing to find out, because you do want it to stay around 7, that neutral, or a little higher.
Okay.
The lower the number goes, the more damaging that could be to your oral health in the long run.
And would that be maybe listed on the label of the product? No.
Rarely, very rarely. There are some products that will list them, but typically the only ones that list them that are the ones that are in the very safe range.
Okay. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So be cautious if it's not listed.
Yes. And I had actually called a company this last week to find out, they had a whole line of products, and I wanted to find out what their pH levels were. And they actually told me they don't even test them. And they advertise themselves as all natural, and they have dry mouth rinses. And yeah, so that is something that not everybody thinks to ask about, but it is a good thing to know.
Well, it sounds like you're doing the research for us.
I'm trying. Yeah. But there's so many products, and they're changing all the time. So that was one aspect when I started side effect support. One of the things I have is a small online store that I could at least vet those products and give a selection. So if somebody wasn't sure what a choice would be or where to get them, they have an opportunity to just stay at home, order from the computer, and have it delivered to their door. And that way they don't have to go from store to store while they're not feeling well and trying to avoid crowds. And
is that still available today?
Yes.
Great. So after this, I'm going to ask you, how do we find that? But I know that on a lot of message boards out there, I guess they're called chats now, people talk about mouth pain. What would you say to that?
That is pretty common. Also, the oral mucositis, and that can range from simple tenderness in the tissue all the way up to really bad ulcerations that can put people at risk for infections or make eating very difficult. One of the go-to rinses that most hospitals use is called Magic Mouthwash, or a version of it, which is a mixed medication mouthwash that has typically 3 main ingredients. Is like a coating agent, Maalox, a milk of magnesia, something like that. Then a diphenhydramine to help reduce inflammation, and then also like a viscous lidocaine or something that's going to numb the tissue. The problem is a lot of times people can have side effects with that. Some people have burning of the tissue. They can have taste changes. Some people have constipation. Other people have diarrhea. So I'm not a fan of that as a choice, but I realize that for some people it gets them through, and in the end that is the most important thing. If it works for somebody and they can get from point A to point B, by all means. But there is actually a certain part of my website as well where we have 2 prescription products that are options as well, that I believe are they don't really have side effects with them, and they are not going to be damaging to oral health. And those are the biggest things that I try to put as a selection on my website. So what they can do is a patient or the doctor can go on the website, print off the prescription, and then it is sent into a specialty pharmacy. And again, the patient can have that delivered right to their door.
Wow. I think we need to just have your website right now. So can you please let all of our watchers know how they can find you and all of this wonderful information?
Yes, it is at www.side, S-I-D-E, effect, E-F-F-E-C-T, support, S-U-P-P-O-R-T.com.
Wonderful. So you are, there's the wealth of information, and I'm sure that there's so much more that you know that I am failing to ask. So what other thing would you like our audience to know about oral health and all that you know?
Well, I would invite everybody to visit the site. That there's always free information. It never cost anybody to come on there and just research. And I try to put information not only for patients and their family caregivers in more layman's terms, but then also information for healthcare providers that's more technical, that hopefully that'll help to bridge that communication gap a bit and give a little more continuity of care. But I'm very excited that we actually just added another new service to the website. I linked with the teledentist, and now people can go on my site and access a virtual consultation with a dentist 24/7, 365 days a year.
Wow.
So I think for some people, when they're in that process where they are told that it's not really safe with their blood levels to go see a dentist, and maybe they don't have a dental office that they consider, theirs, they have a resource that they can access a dentist very economically and talk with them and get some guidance.
That is spectacular. And it's so now. Like, we're all in lockdown. The likelihood of us going to a dentist is not very likely, especially if you're going through your cancer journey. So that feels like a service that just really is of immediate support. So I'm glad that that's available. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's just say one more time. This is Jill Meyer-Lippert, and her company is Side Effect Support, and her website is www.sideeffectsupport.com.
Yes.
And we'll put that in the summary so people have it too written down. But oh my goodness, Jill, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for what you do for all of us on the cancer journey.
Same to you.
Bye.